Hello, welcome to another new and improved episode of the Moving Spotlight Podcast. What's improved? Not much.
I was going to ask.
Corbin's like, is there anything new? There's nothing new. No, new and improved. Corbin, I want to ask you, what is the most romantic thing you've done for someone or they've done for you?
Most romantic? It's tough. I would say, well, recently, this girl I've been seeing, I helped her move she's in the Bay Area. So I flew up all the way, helped her move, and we were exhausted and tired. And we were just like, she was just sore, picking up everything. So I was like, all right, let me just give you a full body massage. So I was just like, I'm going to go get I'm going to warm up the towel in the dryer because it was freezing because it was the first night there. Like, put it over you, make sure you're good to go. Get like some lotion and just kind of get all the knots out that she had. And I felt pretty good about that because it was kind of, she was just stressed, like there's nothing worse than moving. And then on top of that, like being sore because you had to like work out basically for 8 hours. So I was like, okay, let me just help you out. This is the best I can do right now. So that was pretty, I felt pretty good about that. And I hope she appreciated it.
That's great. Did you expect a massage in return, or were you like, I'm just giving this?
No, I was ready. I was ready to go to sleep. It's like I finished it. I was like,
I was done.
You're good. And then I passed out. I don't actually really like massages, to be honest. I don't really get much on it. So I'm just like, I'm just going to go to bed. You enjoy you.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's great.
Did you, what about you? I feel like you've got
what I was thinking about was the way I proposed to my wife was I set up a fake audition. So I set up a fake audition.
Tricky.
And what's funny about it is because so I set up a Saturday morning audition through her agent, and I made it a commercial audition because I didn't want her to have to memorize lines because I knew she'd be pissed. She'd be like, I learned 5 pages. I'm so pissed. And then I had a buddy who was a friend. Shout out to Dave Abrams. He was an actor she didn't know who was sitting in the lobby, so it looked legit. Smart. And then my buddy Sean was running camera, and then when she went in there, then I popped out and proposed to her.
Wow.
And actually my buddy Sean left the camera running, so we actually have it, and it was like the most nervous I've ever been. I was like having trouble finding words and didn't know what to do, and I'm like down on one knee about to proposing or whatever, and she actually, I don't know, maybe she knew something was up, but she didn't know what was going on. She had like a gift for me in her purse, so I like asked her the question, and then she's like, let me get you something, and I'm like, what? Like answer,
yeah, what, like candy bar or something, like
yeah. And then I whisked her up to Hearst Castle, and we stayed at a hotel up there. And the only real quick funny thing about that was I went up there. It was a really nice place. I gave him my reservation number, and the woman behind the counter is like, that reservation number means nothing. I'm like, but I got it. And she's like, you have no reservation, and there's a wedding, and we have nothing available.
Oh no!
And I was melting down. I was like melting down in the lobby, just like not mad, just like, oh my god, like. And this is crazy. A guy comes up and he's like, take a walk with me, and I'm like, okay. So I walk with this random guy. My wife's like, what's going on? He's like, my parents are having some like, medical problems. We need to leave. If you want, you can have our room for the night.
What?
Yes.
Unbelievable. Yes. So lucky.
Yeah. So we got like gifted a room, and exactly. And then, I mean, he probably had a spare key. He was probably going to kill us later, but, sure. But the point was no, we got this free room for like a Saturday night, which was amazing. And like the guy didn't ask for anything in return, which was really cool.
Crazy.
So it was kind of meant to be, I think. Yeah. So that being said, I want to transition now to our guest, who I am very, very excited to have here. She is an actress, a writer, and my neighbor, Corbin. So all three in whatever order of priority you want to put them. Let's welcome Anna Akana to the show. Hey, Anna.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hi. What were you thinking about on that long ass introduction? I apologize.
I honestly would have made your wife memorize a monologue, her love for you, and make her propose to you. That's what I would have done. Just to be a troll.
That's smart.
That's the writer brain. You had a whole thing written out.
That is the writer brain.
And then at the end, it's like, these are my vows to you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Oh, I like that idea. All right, I'm gonna have to try to do it again. Maybe I can trick her again.
Get a divorce, and then get her another fake audition.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Well, Anna, I'm so glad you're here. What one of the things I'm curious about is, acting and that whole world, and kind of how you got excited about acting, how you got into it, kind of where the acting bug came from.
Oh man. Well, when I was 5, I did a production of The Little Red Hen. Not to brag, you guys. I did hand puppets. I didn't realize that was ventriloquism. I thought that was acting. Sure. And I think we performed for our class, and I remember taking off the hand puppet, going back to my desk, and I was like, I'm an actor. That's what I am. But I actually had crippling social anxiety and was really shy, really nervous, couldn't talk to people at all. Had to have my brother like ask people anything for me, like at a store or in a social interaction. And when I was 19, I actually went into stand-up comedy because I figured the best way to deal with my social anxiety and my stage fright is to try to make people laugh on cue every 30 seconds. And part of the sort of transition between those two things, being able to go on stage and being, you know, deathly afraid of it, was I went through my sister's death when I was 17. So losing that sort of primary family member, phantom limb at such a formative age, really made me realize, oh, we all die. You know, I kind of think I'm invincible because I'm a 17-year-old, but death is coming for us, and I need to live in authenticity with myself, because you just never know when it's going to come for you. And so it was really that before and after catalyst moment that made me realize I want to be an actor, despite not seeing, you know, a ton of representation of Asian Americans in media, and despite my father being in the military and not seeing that as a viable career. So that's kind of like where it came from, was inspired at 5 and then kind of had to go into it at 17.
And offshoot of that, where do you think your love of comedy comes from? I'm curious.
Yeah.
Well, I remember when I was 19. So when my sister died, for like 2 years, I did a lot of drugs by myself and was very depressed. I would like take acid in my room, smoke weed like all day, every day, worked a dead end job, didn't go to college because I just didn't apply after that happened. And my boyfriend at the time took me to see Margaret Cho perform. And I remember laughing for the first time in 2 years. And I remember after the show, I was like, oh my God, for the first time in so long, her death is not at the forefront of my mind. Like, I was actually able to, quote unquote, forget about it for half an hour. And I thought that was such a beautiful gift, like that relief and that release. And I wanted to give that to someone else. I was like, wow, the power of comedy for someone really going through it is so transformative. Like, I felt indebted to Margaret for her giving me a reprieve of my darkness and my doom for half an hour.
Wow. Did you have a plan by any means, or did you just kind of go up to like some open mic night, or how do you usually like to work? Do you just go?
Yeah, I was working at GameStop at the time, and I was just like writing in a notebook. I was like, I'm gonna write every funny thing that's ever happened to me and every funny thought I've ever had. And there's this my coworker Kyle was like, yo, I run an Oceanside like comedy show. Like, I'll give you 8 minutes, which for those of you who don't do stand up, 8 minutes for your first time is a painfully long time.
That's a lot.
So I think I practiced and wrote for like a month and then drove to Oceanside, did my first show. Horrible jokes, absolutely terrible, but it was all friends and family, so they were supportive. And I remember being like, oh, this is the first time I felt alive in ages. This is where I'm meant to be. I love performance. I love comedy. And I committed to it, and I never looked back.
Do you remember one of your jokes? I mean, if you don't have it, you don't have it.
I definitely do. I'm Japanese Hawaiian, so I'm historically self-destructive. I also had a joke about like the first time I saw a penis, I compared it to like Godzilla, like, and like acted out watching an erect penis as a kaiju monster.
Nice.
But they were really bad. They were embarrassed.
How did you flow those two together?
You know, I
You
didn't.
just did it.
That's the thing. I just read from a notebook.
I like it.
Oh man, Anna, you're speaking Corbin's language. GameStop, Godzilla. This is like right up
Super
Corbin's nerd lane. It's great. I love it. It's so good. I'm enjoying it too. I want to ask Anna. So then, I know you've been on YouTube for a long time, in a sense, you know. And so, how did that kind of transition when you're doing comedy and to kind of get in that game in that world early on? How did that come about?
Well, when you're doing stand-up comedy at open mic nights, you're usually going to coffee shops, laundromats, places where people are not signing up to see you, and you feel like you're imposing on their daily lives while they're just trying to go about their day. And my brother had shown me a couple of like Ryan Higa videos on YouTube and Community Channel and Happy Slip. And back in the day when YouTube was first formed, some of the most pivotal stars at the time were Asian Americans, because we didn't see ourselves represented anywhere else. And so a lot of the OG big YouTubers at the time were like 25,000 subscribers, were predominantly from the AAPI community. And I loved the idea that someone would voluntarily click on a video of mine to watch me, rather than me at the laundromat, like yelling at a guy folding his clothes. And so I started creating comedic content. And I was in therapy for a really long time. So I started kind of parroting my therapist's advice as the sort of moral of the story, but creating comedy around mental health topics. And that sort of like really spoke to, I think, a wide variety of audience, especially the Asian American community that has almost no resources in the mental health space at the time. And it just kind of, yeah, I've been doing a video or more a week for 13 years.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great.
A little too
Great.
much.
Let me ask you about that, because this is really interesting to me. I mean, for 13 years, a video a week, do you consider yourself a disciplined person?
Yes.
I was going to say, because Corbin and I were doing some research, and we were like, well, what does she not do? So where does that come from? Or how do you schedule that? Or how do you do that? How do you kind of, I mean, I'm just curious, because sometimes people out there are like, well, I'm not disciplined, or having trouble doing all these things, so much on my plate, but you've got a lot on your plate. So how do you, any thoughts or tips on that?
I mean, I have a father who was in the military who was very structured. He's kind of a tiger dad, where we had to be doing a sport, a language, an instrument. Our days were very regimented. If my mom ever went anywhere, he was like, "You're up at 5 a.m. You're doing chores. Like from this hour to this hour, these are your assignments." And so I grew up in a very disciplined environment, and it helped that my father raised me with a reward structure. So every book I read, he'd give me money and take me to the candy store.
Nice.
Every A, you got like $10. They really encouraged me to be entrepreneurial, even if that meant like I was getting paid to write other people's essays or homework. He was like, "Well, you're a businesswoman."
Yeah.
And so I will say, like, a lot of my discipline comes from my father is very regimented. My mother is very artistic. So I really grew up in an environment that allowed me to channel both. Yeah.
So with a lot of that stuff, especially like earlier on with the YouTube stuff, were you kind of like driving it and calling friends to like shoot it and things like that? Or how were you like, putting it together? Yeah.
In the beginning, it was just me. So I would shoot it. I would edit it. I would put a vacuum and then focus the camera and then hit record and then move the vacuum out of the spot, take the spot, do it. And in my early iterations, it would all be clones of myself. So I learned how to do the split screen, and I would have like, we didn't have AirPods at the time, but I would have like a little, what do you even call an AirPod that's wired? Just a headphone.
Yeah.
They don't exist anymore. So who knows?
Like a floppy disk or something.
But I would do a voice memo with everyone in the scene's lines. And then I would sit in one character's spot, listen to the voice memo, say my line, and then do everyone else's, so that when I stitched it together and there were 5 or 6 of me in a single frame, and they could have an entire conversation with the timing in sync.
Wow.
And so I got very known for being like the Asian girl who does the clones on and the comedy and mental health on YouTube. But yeah, I have a DP, I have an editor, I have a grip, I have someone who does sound, so I don't have to have the law for myself. So it's been nice. And that change, I think, only happened after 6 years of making videos completely on my own.
Doing it all on yourself. Yeah. I sometimes will see that her crew walk by. I'm like, oh, she must be doing a shoot.
She's
they're going by. There they go. Do you feel like, because you're doing a lot of acting now, do you feel like that stuff you were doing helps translate into acting, or did you kind of have to like not restart, but like, get a coach or find a play? Like, how did you kind of that transition in a sense,
I was a horrible actor when I started. I think my first acting coach told me I'm a robot, and he wasn't sure if it's because I was Asian or because I grew up with an emotionless father.
Makes sense.
Wow. Okay. I don't think he's a teacher anymore, but
hopefully not.
Lucky everyone. And I was really good at taking feedback. So I was like, oh, I don't want to be a robot. And so actually YouTube really helped me understand the things I think I'm emoting. Maybe I'm emoting too much. Maybe I'm not emoting enough. How does my body come across? Because I was in an environment growing up where emotions are relatively unsafe, and you have to be able to wield them all as an actor, the whole spectrum, the whole wheel. I found watching myself and trying to see my performance as objectively as possible was incredibly helpful. I know it's not for everyone. And, I cringed every time I had to look at myself for like the first 7 years. But now whenever I do TV or film, I always ask, like, please show me the playback. Like, I'd love to see the playback, especially if we're doing something overtly physical like action. I find it really helpful to know how I'm coming across on camera, because then I know exactly how to adjust it for the next take.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I come from Wisconsin. I feel like a lot of people in the Midwest also kind of the emotions kind of get flattened out, because a lot of Norwegians and Germans, and they don't show, like there's like it's going on underneath, but like they don't show it. And I think that's an interesting to be able to kind of explore that and dive into and allow yourself to like feel those things and express them. You know what I mean? Whether it's anger or sadness or, and not be self-conscious about it in a sense. I think that's, that could be, steps towards that.
Oh yeah.
With all your creative endeavors that you have, you said, like we were saying, you have so many things. How do you know you're on the right path to something? Because even with writing or something, obviously you don't know, but like you obviously follow your instinct, and you know that you have your finger on the pulse of certain. It's always different. Everything your whole catalog. I was looking at everything. I was like, there's so many different avenues that you go down. How do you know it's something that needs to be talked about?
Oh wow. In regards to YouTube?
I guess YouTube primarily because it's just a catalog, but even like your book and like in your acting and like what you're choosing, like everything is so unique to you, and yet it speaks to everybody. And I just don't know how you decide that.
Well, with YouTube, I've been out of ideas for 7 years now. I write the videos like half an hour before the crew shows up, because I'm like, I don't know. So the well has been dry for quite some time. But I think in regards to what I feel like, usually what I talk about is something I'm currently going through that I have a good grasp on, that I feel like I want to close the chapter on. So a lot of the sort of clinical advice that I give in my videos is literally parroted by my licensed physician or licensed therapist, so that I feel good about the advice I'm putting out in the world. I'm not like, I just went through a thing and here's my take. I'm like, I just went through a thing and talked about it in therapy for 2 months, and I'm going to make this a sort of commercial 3-minute broad thing for you to take away. But so far, I think a lot of my bigger, more nuanced things that I want to talk about that I can't fit into a 3-minute video through primarily like screenplays and TV and film projects have been at the forefront of my mind. So I'm kind of transitioning away from shorter form content in order to explore like more complex layers of storytelling, as our attention collectively kind of skews towards like, I need a headline and that's it. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's just all intuition. I think as you write and write and write, and if you put yourself on a deadline, inspiration never really comes, but you're leaving yourself open to it, right? You can't like force yourself to have motivation, to have energy every single day you come to the page or you come to work. But I truly believe like if you are disciplined in what you do, the muse will eventually see you're serious and be like, okay, I'll come on over and help you out.
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think a lot of times it has to do with like, not making excuses, but feeling, well, it's got to be perfect, and like, if it's not perfect, I don't want to do it. And it's like, well, that's not really the point, you're not gonna, maybe you have something that like hits in a sense, but like you're never, it's really challenging to make the perfect movie, the perfect video, and I think that's where like the reps you're talking about, I was just thinking about this idea, which is the like, you work on like technique, you work on like the reps, and then you work on like the application of it, so like that can be in different phases, but the idea is, and each time you go through those 3 phases, it kind of like the thing improves, and after over time, it's like, okay, I figured out the technique, I don't have to think about that. Now I'm working on just doing it. And then the third part is like, okay, now is it hitting, is it connecting? And when there's stress or pressure, if it's in an audition or a performance, I put that, because I was thinking, Anna, when you were talking, I'm doing a play right now called The Effect by Lucy Preble, who she writes for Succession now, but it's about mental health. And my character is someone who believes that pills and chemicals can help with like depression. And kind of the lead actress's role is that she's like, thinks like, well, you're not gonna be able to solve things like this from a pill. And it's and then there's a study happening with kind of 2 younger patients as they go through kind of love and breaking up, and if the pills are doing it or if it's them. But it's a really interesting discussion with what you're talking about. And I think, as, and this goes a little bit deeper, but when you're talking about stuff that's longer than like 3 minutes, I mean, this play is longer, but it's been really interesting talking to people afterwards on, what they feel about it, what their opinions are, what they take away, whose kind of side they take. Right.
Is the pill something that's prescribed like sort of an antidepressant, or is he talking about more experimental psychedelics?
More like an antidepressant, right? And if those, and if someone should be on that, if they should be on it for a long time, is that for more of a temporary time? Is it for, many, many years? And then also, just this idea of do we want people on it? Does the company want people on it? Because then we make money, right?
Yes.
Or is it for the, you know what I mean? I don't know. So it's an interesting, I guess what I'm saying is that topic and those things you're exploring, I think they're big topics. So that's
It
pretty
is.
cool.
And like, I think medication is such an interesting, I've taken antidepressants before, but ultimately decided they weren't for me, but they really helped at the time. So I have some friends who are on medication long-term, and you do have to find that balance where, every study about this stuff is fueled by the company that's making it. So do we actually have the necessary information? But also, does that matter if it's having positive effects for people in their lives? It is such a complex topic, and mental health can be really, really nuanced in that way. And I love that there's a play exploring, what the consequences of being medicated are, versus how it's actually helping people. I think that's such a hard space to exist in.
I love therapy. I love everything about it. Like, it helps you learn a little bit about yourself, but I think maybe it's for a very long time, but I think there's always this taboo nature with it. And do you think it's changing? Do you think it's getting a little less taboo with like social media and stuff? Or like, how do you view that world right now? Because you're kind of in the forefront of people who accept it and showcase it and show that it's important and helps you grow. So do you think that's changing?
Oh man, I'm reading this great book. Actually, it's right here. It's called You're Not Listening by Kate Murphy. And it's all about the sort of disconnected loneliness that we're experiencing right now, which is not, news to any of us as we are interfacing on a screen right now. But she really showcased the statistics for the increase in suicide globally is up 60% in the last 40 years. Suicide is now a leading cause of death in the United States. The reported like loneliness, or how many close friends we have, like loneliness is at an all-time high. The amount of actual connection we feel with people is at an all-time low. And so I thought it was incredibly fascinating to read about how you can be surrounded by people and yet everyone is kind of feeling really alone and not looking and not listening to you. She also points out how like we see the pivotal of success right now as a TED Talk, as someone giving a speech, and we have clubs for people to learn how to public speak, but we don't have clubs about how to be an active listener, about what are the real ways in which we can listen and have in-depth conversation. Because we're all so busy thinking about what is it we're going to say. We all have a platform to shout out our own opinions on every single topic. And I really, really like the book, and it's making me want to kind of like shut up and listen a lot more. Cause I'm like, that is the way we learn, is by hearing each other's experiences.
Yeah, I was just thinking when you said that we had opening night on Friday and the audience was really rowdy, Anna, and I think it's because they were so happy to be out and about and around people. No, really, because like people have been like shut in for so long and to be at theater, but the energy was so great. But I think with what you're saying, it is really interesting to think about where I think we do need that, and we do need, we need community and stuff like that, but sometimes that can be hard to find, and so people, where they find it, if they find it online or wherever they find that community, but it's so wonderful when you find whatever that space is, and I think some people, they find that at church, they find it in an acting class, a sport, or, whatever that is. I think it is so important, but it's easier and easier. And I think this is part of it. It's just like, our attention spans are tiny. I mean, they're so tiny. When I'm at red lights now, the light turns green and I look, and like the car to my right, they're on their phone. The driver on my left on their phone, and until like I drive, then everyone goes. But until then, like no one honks because everyone behind is on their phone waiting for that car. I mean, it's like our attention spans are like nothing, so I mean, who knows how that all mixes in. But
I know. I used to ride a motorcycle around town, and I had to sell it because so many people were on their phones. I got like knocked off my bike twice, but I remember I would like drive on the freeway, and like obviously if I'm on a motorcycle, I can't be on my phone. There's like a sense of like impending death every moment, and every single person I would pass going like 60 or 70 on the freeway, glancing at their phone every other second, and I was like, this is terrifying. We need cars now. I need like the Will Smith iRobot pods
to take us around.
Yeah. And why not? We should like let people watch TV while they're doing whatever.
I'm going to regret asking this because I know nothing about motorcycles, but what kind of motorcycle did you have?
I had a 250 Honda Rebel. It's like the smallest motorcycle you can get. I upgraded once and it was a mistake because if it falls to the side, I couldn't lift it. I would need people to help me. Yeah. But I mean, in this city, it's kind of impossible to
Yeah,
be a
it's very
motorcycle rider
challenging.
and not get in a crash eventually.
Yeah, it's very challenging.
Yeah.
And I wanna transition and talk a bit about filmmaking. Now, have you written some things yourself that you've like? Have you been directing, or how kind of what kind of stuff have you been? I mean, outside of the YouTube stuff, have you been
Yeah.
writing scripts or yeah?
I'm a writer as well as an actor, and right now I have two projects in development. One's at HBO Max, based on my book, which is about it's an absurdist comedy, dark comedy about a pair of twins in which one has committed suicide, clearly inspired by my own life. And then I have a show at Netflix that's based on a Dark Horse comic book that we are in rewrites on for the pilot, and I think after that we would have to write a Bible, and then maybe we would find out if we get greenlit or not. But as a writer, like I love directing, and I want to direct my own stuff eventually, but I think directing is truly the most work job in this industry. You have to have a vision, you have to be incredibly decisive, and you have to make a ton of decisions all the time. So I don't commit to anything as a director that I don't feel like it has to be me, and that I can elevate the writing, and that I am willing to put acting, put writing, put everything on hold, because directing is so time consuming. So I'm a bit pickier as a director, but as a writer, it's been wonderful to get to really see the development process, because you realize every single TV show and movie that is made is a miracle, which is crazy because so many of them are so bad.
Yes.
And every single one just like a miracle after going through this process.
Do you write by yourself those scripts, or did you work with some other people, or?
Occasionally I
Yeah.
work with as a writing team. My writing
Okay.
partner is Maggie Levin. She's penning the Labyrinth sequel. She's also penning
Cool.
Caster for Paramount Pictures.
Yeah.
But other than that, I write alone. So if I do
Okay.
comedy, I typically write with another person, because I feel like you're able to really get the juices
Yeah.
flowing. But if I'm doing
Yeah.
like a dark drama about the internment camps, then I'll just be
Yes.
brooding alone in my office.
I'm curious. Okay, so I'm just going to list off all the things that you do just because it makes it a little bit easier. But you have a clothing line, you have a book, YouTube, acting, producing, directing, musician, influencer, podcast. How do you schedule your time to be able to fit all that in? Because like I think that's very unique to everybody has their own way of doing it. But like, do you have a calendar and do you just follow that calendar? Or
Corbin
what
has
does
a
that look like?
colored calendar,
I
so
do
he's
that.
hoping you have
I'm
the same.
hoping you do the
He'd
same.
be really excited if you did. Yeah, look at that. She got claps.
Yep.
I'm happy to tell you, I also have a Google color
That's
coordinated.
Oh, I knew it. You
So
too.
perfect. John, figure it out.
I don't even have
I
an
truly
iPhone.
believe in the philosophy of every little bit counts. So even if I can only work on a script for 10 minutes, like a day, then I do those 10 minutes. Cause I think, tiny increments of stuff adds up to big projects at a time. But I also am 32. I'm getting tired. My back is hurting. I've got neck problems. So I'm
Oh,
trying
stop it. Please stop
to cull
it.
it down.
Yeah,
Oh my
I think it helps to because every time when I'm struggling with trying to start something, if you just do 5 minutes, that becomes 15 minutes, and then you're also 10% of the way there. And I don't think people
There you
ever
go.
get that right away, and it just takes. I think that's important to kind of get people to realize that anybody who's successful does that too.
It's it. Go ahead, Anna.
Sorry. I also just think, as you were saying earlier, John, like perfectionism is the enemy of done. And I truly do not have perfectionism. I'm always like, good enough. If this is 80, 90% there, good enough. Like
Yeah.
you can always come back to it, send it out into the world. You don't know how anyone's going to receive your work until they receive it. The things I have worked the hardest on, things I have poured my heart and soul into, my audience didn't give a shit. Things that I was like, I don't know what to talk about today. Here's a stupid video with a stupid idea. They're like, it's viral, 1 million views. Oh my God. So you really don't know what you create that's going to resonate with people. So I'm always like, put it out there, like spaghetti it against the wall, not to
Yeah.
say don't actually put any effort into what you do, but don't be precious about it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it has less to do with like the right choice and more about the commitment to the thing, right? I mean, that's what I've been thinking about. I've been, Anna Corbin knows this, but like in the morning, I've been working on I play a lot of basketball, so I've been working on my 3-point shot, and I've been going every day and making a commitment to that. And it's like, I've just seen my shot like get better and better. But the point is like, even on days when I'm like, I'm tired, I'm going to go. I'm just going to go. Yeah. And when I get there, but like, but the point is I've made that commitment, and it's been so cool. The little increments over the long term. Now, I don't know if it's been like a month and a half, but I'm just pretty much going almost every day. It's amazing what that can do. And I think when you talked about whatever it's 5, 10, it can be longer, but that commitment to that thing helps move it along, because I think that happens with people, especially artists or actresses, like they have all this enthusiasm for like a week, and then it just drops. Like, I've got the best idea, this script's amazing. It's for a week, and then it just drops off, and I think that is, that's getting those projects done, like you were saying, Anna, is like such an important part, whether they're, as great as you want them to be or not, right? Because there's a lot that goes.
We all have to give ourselves permission to be bad. Like, I was like, I may not be the most talented, I may not be the smartest, like, but what I can do is I can show up and I can do the work, and I am going to allow myself to be bad at the beginning of this, because I have so many friends who get very discouraged if the feedback isn't stellar for their first script, or they bomb their first audition, and then they're discouraged for all time. And I was like, you got it. Like, what do you think? You're just going to be an amazing genius? Like, that's not a realistic standard to set for yourself. Give yourself 5 to 10 years, and then you reevaluate everything. And so I think having a long-term mindset, which is really hard with our short attention span these days, but really giving yourself permission to be garbage at what you do for a couple of years in order to get better.
I love that. Tell us a little bit about your podcast. I'm curious.
Oh man, I don't have it anymore, but it was called Explain
okay.
to Me.
Yes.
We did 100 episodes, and then I was like, I gotta retire this. It's podcast. I mean, credit to you guys. Podcasts take up a lot of time, as evidenced by the episode length. But I interviewed experts from around the world. I was very inspired by a conversation with Ron Howard and Brian Grazer. I worked on New Form Digital for a show with them, and I believe it was Brian said he meets with different experts and just listens to them talk for an hour. And that's how he gets a lot of story ideas. And so I was like, let me do that, but monetize it. And so me and my partner at the time would interview various experts from different fields.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Oh my gosh. That's great. That's great.
With a little bit of a pivot, but I mean, you're in Marvel, you're like, it seems like you put your nerd on your sleeve, and being me, like I'm a nerd, but like I kind of keep it a little bit suppressed a little bit at times. And that's what I'm wondering.
Why, Corbin?
That's what I'm wondering. Why do I do that? So how do you get out of that shell, and like how do you feel the need to express that? Like what is your skill?
Corbin, you should just let your freak flag fly.
For sure.
Nerds are in right now, I think Bill Gates really turned the tides for nerds everywhere.
He helped us, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I like being a fangirl. I think there's no shame in really passionately loving something, and internet vitriol has made it like cool to like hate things or not care. And I'm like, why? I fucking love Watchmen, or, I love Brian K. Vaughan, or what is the shame in expressing how much you love something? I think it's really cool to care, and it's really cool to give a shit about wanting to spread good work, and good art that you just appreciate. What are you a nerd about? Are you like a D&D nerd?
Not D&D, but I do have a bunch of board games, so that's one that I am a big nerd about. But I actually, for some reason, don't like D&D. I think I thought I would, because it's like improv meets nerd stuff, and I just was not that interested for whatever reason. But I just like everything. Like, I love Watchmen, and I'm okay at expressing it, but it's just when people talk to me, it's not like the first thing that comes out of my mouth. So I always feel like I'm not being true to myself. I'm trying to figure out how to like close that gap. And of course, it's always a lifelong journey, no matter what. But somebody like you who's become successful through that, it's so cool to talk to and kind of pick your brain.
Yeah, I think most people love, if you can stand in your truth, like unapologetically. Like, seeing people do that has given me permission to do that. Seeing people reinvent themselves or be bold, or just own their nerddom, I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Like, and normally I know I have to work on something if I'm jealous. So if I see my friend doing something and I feel judgmental or jealous, I'm like, oh, that's because there's something that's something I want to do, and I don't feel like I have permission to do. That's why I feel this way about this person or this friend. And so I think once I really realized that through therapy, I was like, okay, if I ever have that feeling, that's a signal that I need to start allowing myself to be that, or do that, or emulate that, because it's just creating resentment and inauthenticity in myself.
Like that. And what about working on like Marvel sets and stuff? How is that, like kind of a fun little letting that come out?
No, that was the worst set I've ever been on.
Oh no.
That was the worst. They were very mean.
Bummer.
Oh no. Yeah.
It was my worst job, I think, ever in my career.
Oh no.
That happens.
Yeah. I mean, I'll let Marvel apologize someday by bringing me on to another better set.
There we go. Bring us back. Yeah, each set could be like a different functional or dysfunctional family, right?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, when you two were talking about, I was thinking, you know, I mean, I'm going back to like high school where like I feel like because I can relate to what you're both saying. I think there's this feeling, at least I had, of like always wanted to fit in. So you didn't want to be different. So you're like, if that's different and people are like teasing, I'm gonna like bring that in. And then I always like for myself, I always felt like I was like the coolest of the nerds. But then when I was like with the jocks, then I was like too responsible or something, you know what I mean? And so I think it was like a kind of a weird for me, like a look, kind of a look of a little in between those two. And so kind of, I think finding your place, but the word I was thinking of, Anna, you said is, you know, being authentic, you know, and I think that's a really big thing. If like being authentic to yourself, Corbin, or whatever that thing is that excites you, I see that over and over again. Like, even if I'm not passionate about it, if I meet someone who's super passionate about something, I'm like, wow, they are really into dolphins. Like, that is cool. Like, I like dolphins. I think dolphins are great. But like, this person's really into it. Like, that's like, it actually gets me more excited. You know, even though I, you know, have never like read a book on dolphins, I still think they're cool. But this person's like devoted themselves to that or whatever. And I think that's kind of that's a really, it's exciting to be around people like that.
Oh yeah.
Know? Right. That like you said, Anna, that like don't want to tear stuff down. They want to like create, or they want to build stuff, you know, they want to build stuff up.
Yeah. And I think I did this experiment in my 20s where I talked anytime I was in a public place, this is before COVID, obviously, but I would try to make a conversation with a stranger. I think it was like a homework assignment for improv or something. And I remember the week long experimental time where I did this. I learned so much about so many random topics that really shaped things I started to get interested in, because there were so many people are so interested in talking about what they like and about themselves and their experiences. And I was like, oh my God, like really like listening to the wide variety of human passion. I found it so helpful, even just as an actor and a writer. Cause I was like, first of all, this guy's a character that I'm going to write one day. And like, oh, this girl's like love of whatever is really helpful in Audition. But I think that's the biggest part of what I miss in this post-COVID world is random conversations with strangers. I remember the first time me and my friends went out to dinner like last week, and we were having so much fun with the waiters. We were just like being full on goblins, and they were being goblins back to us. And we were talking about our trauma and our family lineage, and they were making fun of us, and we loved it. And I was like, oh, I'm craving, and I'm so thirsty for this human interaction. And to be an artist is to be inspired by everything around us. And usually that's people. Like landscapes, pretty fucking boring to me. I want to see you know?
Yes, that's true. And I got a question. You said you're hanging out with your friends. On some of your videos, I noticed that you use your female friends to portray males. I'm assuming that's a conscious choice, and I'm just curious if you want to discuss that at all, or, you know.
Yeah, I mean, Michelle and Melissa are a pair of identical twins. They're also actors and musicians. But after I realized I don't have to be a clone of myself for every video, that's time consuming, and I have friends who are actors. We just kind of ended up doing that. First of all, because I always played men in my videos and had a fake mustache. But in COVID, I was like, oh, we have to have a bubble. So we couldn't really have any other guests at the time. And one of our cinematographers, Auden Bowie, now has a crush on Man Melissa. And Melissa comes out and like dazzles the set with his charms. But it's really just a choice because we bulk shoot. Like, so we'll meet and shoot for 4 days a month, and that'll knock out anywhere from 4 to 8 videos, which is about 1 to 2 months of content.
Gotcha. And then the other thing I just wanted to ask you, you know, one of my students who's Asian American, he left the business for a while because he couldn't find any jobs, you know, and then he's come back to acting, which is really cool. And I'm just curious what you're seeing as far as, you know, diversity, as far as representation, you know, which is kind of an exciting time, I think, as that feels like that's cracking open more and more, you know. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, when I started, which was, I think, 11 to 13 years ago, every character I auditioned for was in some way racist. It was horribly one-dimensional and stereotypical. It was a happy ending massage therapist who would like disappear out of frame to give someone a blowjob, or it was a high school student that was crying because she got a A- on her test. And I had casting directors tell me like, oh, well, we already have one Asian on the show. We can't have another. People will be confused. They won't be able to tell you apart. I dealt with such intense racism, you know, 10 years ago. And then now there's so many films with an all Asian, like Everything Everywhere All at Once just came out. Crazy Rich Asians did a huge thing. Minari, which I was like, oh my God, growing up in some parts of the South, I've never seen Asian people in the Southern setting. That's awesome.
Mhm.
I just did the sequel to 47 Ronin, which was an all Asian cast in Budapest, which felt like, wow, I've never seen an all Asian cast in a European country for an American film. So
Mhm.
it's just flipped. It's been so 180. And now it's interesting because the sort of community, the AAPI community is talking about how we need more shows now that just represent Asian people as people, not necessarily, these different niches or sectors. And
Mhm.
it's hard because as an Asian American, you are sort of forced to be a monolith for the experience of your people. And we all have different experiences. We can't speak for everyone. And we kind of have to blindly support every AAPI project right now because we want it to be a financial success in order to
Mhm.
have more projects. Even though you're like looking at a project, you're like, I hate that actor, or I really have beef with that director, but I gotta tweet, I gotta blindly support this thing because
Yes.
their success is my community's success.
Yes.
But it really has, the conversation has changed, and I think that's amazing.
Mm.
And what about with writing? Have you seen like with yourself as well? Are you feeling able to kind of express more of like real people in the world?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because as a writer, you definitely feel like you have to kind of like check woke boxes in the sense of you're being asked to speak on behalf of a lot of people since your representation is so low in the space. I think in the writer space, it's the representation for Asian Americans is even lower than in acting.
Mhm.
And I do feel this sort of responsibility to have an Asian American protagonist or to make sure that my cast is diverse. So you give everyone very specific names as a writer so people are aware of what those nationalities are. Um, I don't know. It's an immense sense of responsibility, but I've also found a lot of like um tension with some Caucasian writers because there's this narrative that if you are from a marginalized community, it must be easier for you to get work or easier for
Mhm.
you to get jobs. Like
Mm.
I've had some people be like, "Oh, you're so lucky that you're Asian because being Asian is so in right now with Stop Asian Hate." And I'm like, "Okay,
Mm.
well, I stopped
Yeah.
going to the Whole Foods I literally live next to because of the looks I was getting." But okay,
Yeah, yeah.
sure.
Lucky.
Yeah, so it's really difficult to also navigate identity politics. I think when you're in this, like, I'm like, why can't I just write about whatever, like
Mhm.
a farmer or living on whatever? But I have to write about, my whole people. I have to advance the humanization of Asians. Um, but that said, I'm very grateful to do it.
Yeah. Um, I was going to ask you what, as far as acting, are you working on anything coming up or do you have anything coming out? I mean, obviously 47 Ronin, which is super exciting. That sounds great.
Yeah, that's coming out in October on Netflix.
Okay.
But no, as an actor, I'm in pilot season. I'm looking for
Yes.
my next gig. I think I
Great.
got pinned for 4 things that booked none of them.
Classic.
So living that sweet job to job life.
Yes. And for people that don't, being pinned or being put on a veil means they're like, hey, we want to check if you're available. You're like, I'm available. And then they're like, if you don't hear anything, you didn't get it, or they get released or you get booked. So
Yeah.
it's like you get close, which can be sometimes frustrating. Well, I wanted to not end things before I also tell you, Corbin, and everyone, that Anna is like one of the sweetest people I know. Sometimes she'll be given like swag and she'll think of my son Quill. And so she dropped some stuff off that, like some Pokemon
Aw.
stuff that Quill, like, literally, that was his, I don't know if you know this, Anna, that was his introduction to Pokemon, and now he loves it. Oh yeah, he loves it.
really?
Like he's obsessed, and he's really obsessed with like the highest value cards. So he takes all the good ones himself and then gives me like all the low, and then he's like, let's battle. I'm like, I have nobody above 100, you know what I mean? Like everyone's 90 and below, and his are like 200, 210. And so thank you but it is, no, I love it. And then you also, I think, gave us some like Raya stuff. But my point is, I thought that was pretty lovely and very thoughtful, and you really didn't have to. So it meant a lot
Oh my God,
to
of
me.
course.
And
I
yes,
do
well,
some
I
Disney
mean,
shows, and I like they're always sending me like stuffed toys. I'm like, I'm not a child, and I don't have a child. I'm like, "Okay, I can give it to John and Annie."
well, I appreciate that. A lot of people wouldn't be that thoughtful, you know. So anyways, but I just wanted to say that, you know.
Of course.
And then that also leads us into Corbin and I, one of our favorite sections. Corbin, do you want to tell her what it is?
Your best bad
Acting. All right, Anna. This is what everyone gets excited about and a little bit nervous. No. We've got a quote for you. We're going to put it in the chat. The idea is to have fun with this. Now, we actually you're going to have a scene with Corbin. This is what is exciting, right? So, you can. This is. Do you know what this is from? You
No.
probably no. Corbin, you want to tell her?
It's from Friends. It's Rachel and
this
Ross.
is from Friends. But you can have fun with it. You can do over the top. You can do soap opera. You can do Western. Corbin will respond however. The idea is, I don't know, just having fun with it, being your best bad actor.
Literally just froze for me.
I saw that.
Oh,
Yes, and I think you're back now. Can you see us?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, perfect. All right. So whenever, and I might give you guys a redirect. This is going to be fun.
Okay.
So whenever you're ready, you've got the first line, Anna.
But I never had anything to worry about. Ross was never really good at the flirting thing.
What are you talking about? It worked for you.
Oh. No, you're right. We met, you flirted, and then bam.
Oh no, she froze.
Wait, okay, we got to do it again.
No,
You froze. No. Why are we freezing at the key? It was so good. It was so good. Okay, we're gonna take it from the top. Let's do that same. This is good. Hey, this happens on set. Anna, someone's phone goes off. We got to do it again. Corbin, don't get in your head. All right, same take again. We got to do that same. Hit your notes again. All right, here we go. And rolling.
But I never had anything to worry about. Ross was never really good at the flirting thing.
What are you talking about? It worked with you.
Oh. No, you're right. We met, you flirted, and then bam. 9 years later, you had me.
Great, Anna. You stayed in the same channel. Corbin changed his up for some reason. So thank you, Anna.
Sorry, you can't keep me in a box.
Okay, good. All right. Okay, so
I have a fun redirect too, by the way. So just
what's the fun redirect? Go for it, Corbin. If you got something, what is it?
Well, Anna said that she did the hand puppets, and I want her to do both characters with hand puppets.
Beautiful. So Anna, you're going to do both lines, and you do the hand. You're going to do the hand puppets. Yeah.
Okay.
This is good. I actually. Oh, she moved her.
She moved her camera. Oh, yeah.
But I never had anything to worry about. Ross was never really good at the flirting thing. What are you talking about? It worked with you. Oh, no, you're right. We met, you flirted, and then bam! 9 years later, you had me.
Oh, so amazing.
Yes. Oh my gosh, we've never had that before, Anna. That is a first. That is a first, and I love that you framed yourself out and just did the hands. Oh my God.
I love ventriloquism. What can I say?
It started everything.
You're good. You're good.
It's not even ventriloquism.
I was going to say, you know what? Puppeteers and ventriloquists are going to be pissed at you, Anna.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to release.
God.
Just that clip, Corbin. Oh my God.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry to ventriloquists everywhere and to puppetry people.
Bob Barker Marionette's
All four
going to be
of
so pissed. Bob Barker Marionette's going to come for you, Anna. They're all going to come for you.
Twice. Okay. My brain
Your
is
brain.
mushed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been mushed. Oh my gosh. Well, that is amazing. That the puppetry you did there was amazing.
So happy.
Not ventriloquism. Well, Anna, this has been lovely, so wonderful, and I'm super excited for all the success you've had and the success you're having. And like I said, I tell Corbin all the time, it's always lovely to find really like nice people that are doing great work, that are having success and things like that. And you're one of those people. So, we are, really grateful that you're here and that you took the time. And so we really appreciate it.
And the sentiment is the same. It was so lovely to see you, John, and Corbin. It was so nice to meet you. Also, I love your room setup.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
It's got some guitars. It's got some acting. It's got all the art.
Very well balanced.
Isn't it? Yeah. I mean, he doesn't play the guitars; they're just props.
Yeah, they're just props.
But
Yeah.
I just love the setup.
You hold
It's
it
a
this
good
way,
setup.
right? It's just straight up.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, Anna, we won't take up any more of your time. Thank you so much for being here. We really, really appreciate it, and thank you for this great interview. Thanks so much. Bye. Thanks for listening, everybody. What a wonderful episode with
So
Anna
fun.
Akana. She's awesome, man. She's just the best. Please go check us out on Instagram. We are at The Moving Spotlight. You can also find us on YouTube and at our website, which is
TheMovingSpotlight.com.
Look at that. They're all the same, folks. You
Yeah.
cannot get lost.
Wonder who did
on the
that.
internet. What's that?
I wonder who did that. Somebody
we did
who's
it
really
together,
smart.
buddy. We did it together.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks again for listening, everybody. We'll catch you on the next one.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the
Moving Spotlight Podcast.